What's up everyone, Kaze no What If is here with What If Naruto had the Sharingan. Before we start, if you like the video, like it, share with your friends, comment, and let's start the video. Minato's attempt at sealing the Kyuubi went wrong, very wrong. The old fox noticed Minato's use of the Shiki Fujin upon feeling a tug on his chakra and seeing the Shinigami on the Hokage's back. In a desperate attempt to save himself, he managed to break the hold of Kushina's chains, severing her head with one of his claws. Kushina thought Minato as he watched his wife's head leaving her body. He was trembling in horror, sadness, and fury, and as the tears rolled down his face, his will to fight started to falter. How could it not? The woman he loved above everything else was just beheaded in front of him. No matter how strong or resilient Minato could be, there's only so much a man can take, but he had to get a hold of himself. There was a lot at stake here, and the sound of a crying baby reminded him of that fact. He found comfort in knowing he wouldn't live much longer. The Kyuubi picked the wailing baby up with one of his tails, taking Naruto very close to his mouth. He looked down at Minato's trembling body. A threat. "Stop the sealing, mortal!" snarled the Kyuubi, clear disgust in his voice when talking to Minato. The Yondaime Hokage, seeing very little choice, complied and willed the Shinigami to stop while he directed the chakra he managed to take from the Kyuubi into Naruto's little body. A seal-like mark appeared on the boy's stomach, and as soon as it appeared, it dissolved into nothing. Normally, a seal of this nature fades into the recipient's body and only shows itself when the recipient channels chakra. The seal on Naruto shattered and turned into a puddle of ink. Seeing this, Minato realized that sealing the chakra in his newborn had failed, and it was too late now to redirect the half of the fox's chakra he sealed in his own body. Knowing his life was about to end and that there was nothing more he could do, the Hokage decided to try one more thing. Kyuubi. The old fox had to blink at that. Not even his siblings address him with that level of familiarity. "I have something to ask of you." Now he was surprised. "Please, leave." He just stared at him, almost like looking at his soul. "We both know you didn't attack on your own will. I despise you for what you did to my wife, but you're as much of a victim as Kushina. You were denied your freedom since before I was born, and now Naruto here." The Hokage took one last look at his son. Naruto here will have to grow up without his parents because of the mistakes of dead men. Senju Hashirama gave away the Baijuyo like they were pets in his search for peace. What did he accomplish again? So I'm asking you. No, I'm begging you, Kyuubi. Be free. If you ask the Shinigami why they allowed this to go on for so long, the answer would be, I don't know, whether it was out of respect for the dying man or the Millennium Fox standing in front of them. They don't really know. But this was as long as their grace extended, and with the legendary man's parting words, the god of death took his soul and vanished. That was the scene the Sandaime arrived to, a collapsing Hokage holding a headless woman, a crying baby, and a gigantic fox standing in front of him. His Umbu were ready to move, and the old Hokage stood his guard. As amusing as it was for the fox to see them thinking they stood a chance, he had no wish to stay in this village any longer. "Don't look so scared, old man. I won't destroy you nor this Puna village." Your Hokage made sure of that. Both the Umbu and the old Hokage were confused, to say the least. They weren't dumb enough to trust the fox. Kitsune were very cunning and deceitful creatures after all, but they knew they stood no chance against the immortal. "An Uchiha," said the fox, interrupting everyone's thoughts. An Uchiha wearing a mask was the one who broke the seal. He didn't appear to be from this village, and he claimed to be Uchiha Madara. At that, Hiruzen stared in disbelief. "Madara? Don't be so quick to discard the possibility. He did summon me in the middle of your village. Even if he's not Madara himself, they could both be related." Kyuubi looked away from the battlefield. Now no longer under the influence of his Sharingan, I'm able to break the summoning contract. This is no longer my problem. With that, the Kyuubi turned around and walked away, while the Sandame quickly picked up the crying baby and started to retreat. If the Yondame couldn't subdue the fox, no one in this village could. The Shiki Fujin seal on his successor's stomach was enough proof of that. "Naruto," said the fox, stopping the Umbu and Sandame on their tracks. "Huh?" was the, oh so eloquent, response of the tired old man. "Naruto, that's the boy's name," and as he said those words, the legendary kitsune vanished into nothingness. The only evidence of his presence was the cloud of red smoke left behind. The sun was shining brightly, a large contrast with the chilling breeze. It has been years since the Kyuubi attack. The village is recovering slowly but steadily. In an apartment not too far away, the Hokage and a young boy could be seen eating while talking to each other. Soon, the room turned silent when the boy abruptly brought up the question that the old Hokage dreads so much. "Gigi, did you know my parents?" The poor boy had lost count of how many times he asked that very same question. At this point he asked because it turned into a habit, not because he actually hoped to get an answer. The old Hokage sighed. "Naruto-kun, asking about the dead won't bring them back to life." Sarutobi Hiruzen was a powerful and respected man, but like any other he was human and humans make mistakes. Now he realizes not telling the little kid of his heritage was one of them. He had decided that keeping that information from him would keep him safe. Minato Namikaze made a lot of enemies, and if there was a chance those enemies would retaliate and seek revenge through the man's only child, he wouldn't take it, so he didn't. And kept the secret on a need-to-know basis for the past 6 years, waiting for his own student and the legendary man sensei to approach the boy about it when he felt the time was right. Looking at it now, he realizes that might not have been for the best. The boy was very smart and Hiruzen was aware of this, but he was also mature enough to handle being an orphan and living by himself. Sarutobi was sure he could keep such a secret if he was explained exactly why it needed to be a secret. His own student, however, didn't know the boy near enough to realize such a thing. Not that he made any effort to ever get to know him at all, mused the Hokage, but immediately shoved that thought away. It wasn't important right now. Naruto was a very lonely child. He knew nothing about his parents. He wasn't ostracized or hated, he was just upset, sad, lonely and confused, like any other child would in his situation. The day of the Kyuubi attack, the hospital took heavy damage, the nursery being completely destroyed. Many children's lives were lost that day, and Naruto, being the lone survivor, gained quite a reputation. Not as a Jinchuriki or a demon child, although some people had some questionable theories, but as a reminder of what a lot of people lost, and some of those people would go out of their way to let him know just that. Thankfully that was only some hurt and stupid people. The problem was that Naruto didn't like pity, and that was the way everyone would look at him. It made Naruto develop survivor's guilt. Top that with the hardships being an orphan entails, and it was a recipe for disaster. "I made a mistake, Naruto, and I hope you can forgive me." Naruto perked up, confused on why the old man was saying this so suddenly. "Come with me, there's a lot we need to discuss." Both left on their way to the Hokage's office. Hiruzen really wasn't looking forward to telling him about Minato, and he wouldn't. He would, however, explain why it's being kept a secret. Knowing that you're being lied to is better than knowing nothing at all, but he figures there's no harm in telling him about his mother and the Uzumaki clan. Years have passed, and now the young ninja, Naruto, has finally passed the graduation exam. Although, it wasn't an easy ride to graduation. Naruto is a very smart and creative child. The pranks he sometimes played on people showed a level of creativity and detail many hoped to accomplish. If only he was that dedicated to his other studies. That is not to say he is academically dumb, he just doesn't try hard enough to learn boring and useless things that have nothing to do with being a cool ninja. He often offers the bare minimum to pass his written exams, and that doesn't help much either, which frustrates his sensei to no end. Umino Iruka was aware Naruto had the potential to be hailed as a prodigy but never tried hard enough to exploit that potential. He did pass though, even if he had to work very hard to get the control necessary to perform the regular Bunshin. Apparently Naruto's chakra reserves were very big and dense even for an Uzumaki. The Hokage suspects it has something to do with Naruto's chakra being purple, like Iruka said it was when it started swirling around him during his examination. So you're saying, Naruto's chakra flared and swirled around him while he was trying to perform the Bunshin and it was a different color? Yes, Hokage-sama, Naruto's always had a hard time controlling the little amount of chakra he needs to perform the Bunshin because of his large reserves. But it isn't weird for someone's chakra to flare and swirl around them in these situations. And it wasn't. Naruto was just one of many with this kind of problem, but for some reason Naruto had a lot more trouble than it is normal. There was no real reason for his chakra reserves to be that big, even for an Uzumaki. What surprised me was the color of his chakra. Until now I had never seen purple chakra. Do you know what it means, Hokage-sama? Sarutobi Hiruzen wasn't hailed as the professor for nothing, but even he had never heard of that. That is not to say he didn't suspect what could have caused that peculiar phenomenon, but some things are better left unsaid. Hokage-sama. Uzumaki Naruto stole the forbidden scroll of sealing. No, he didn't. The Chunin tasked to inform the Hokage of what had happened moments ago was very confused about the blonde kid seated in the stool right next to the Hokage. His face became quite a nice shade of red. Naruto-kun and I are having dinner together to celebrate his graduation. How could he have possibly stolen the scroll? The answer to that question was revealed not long after that. Sarutobi took Naruto along with him back to his office, where they discovered that someone posing as Naruto had made his way into the tower while Hiruzen was away. Too bad they didn't take into consideration who the Hokage was to Naruto. Iruka-sensei is in the forest with Mizuki-sensei, declared the blonde. How do you know that, Naruto? I guess I just know. I've always been able to feel where people not so far away from me are. Isn't that normal? What a time to discover Naruto had sensing abilities. Could you lead us to them, Naruto-kun? Hiruzen stood up as he asked, Naruto following the action. He then suddenly turned around and sprinted to the window. Let's go. Naruto led the Hokage and a few Umbu to them and got just in time to stop a Fuma's shuriken from ending Iruka's life by the hand of Mizuki. Multiple people in masks jumped into the scene, surrounding Mizuki, who was looking around frantically, daring him to even move a muscle. Mizuki raged. He turned around and fled. At least he tried to flee before one of the Umbu suddenly took his hand, twisting it before slamming his whole body onto the ground, back first. Mizuki howled in pain. He tried to squirm off the hold on his hand, but the Umbu was persistent and instead tightened the hold. You're more involved in this than I would like, Naruto. This incident will be classified as a B-rank mission on your record. You helped track a spy, which means this mission will be kept a secret, known to only the people involved. Is that clear? Asked Hiruzen. Naruto had never been on this side of his grandfather's Hokage mode. He wasn't being threatened, he was just being treated as a shinobi, and for Naruto it was a bit overwhelming. Naruto was still Naruto, which meant he was also excited for having completed his first mission. Yes, Jiji. Not a word, replied Naruto with a smile. After the Umbu apprehend him and took the traitor to Ti, Naruto, the Hokage, and Iruka took the scroll back to the tower. Both Hiruzen and Iruka failed to notice Naruto taking a look at the scroll while they were distracted talking among themselves. Kage Bunshin ha. It was later discovered Mizuki simply chose Naruto to impersonate because he thought an orphan would have a lot more trouble proving his innocence without the backup of a family to serve as an alibi, so he figured by the time the truth was discovered he would have gotten very far away. Naruto just so happened to be the only orphan he knew enough to imitate. Talk about bad luck. The objective is quite simple: you have to get these bells from me before the alarm rings. But there's only 2 bells, sensei, said a girl named Harano Sakura. She was the top kunoichi of the year. She got a perfect score in all written portions of the academy and did fairly well in all other areas. That is not to say she was the best there is, but the academy's low standards led her to believe she was. That's right, that means one of you won't get a bell and will be sent back to the academy for another year. Let it not be said that Hatake Kakashi isn't good at deceiving people. After telling his students to come at him with the intent to kill and the Pinkards' concern for their sensei's well-being, like they could hope to hurt a Jounin, they scattered and hid away, well, almost all of them. Can I get a bell? Huh. I asked if I can get a bell. It took a few seconds for Kakashi to process what his student was asking. He replied nonetheless. You're asking me if I can give you a bell? Uh-huh. No. Oh well, it was worth a shot. And after saying those words Naruto burst in a cloud of smoke. Let it not be said that Uzumaki Naruto doesn't think outside the box. After his failed but clever, if you ask him, attempt at getting a bell from Kakashi, Naruto decided to retreat and think for a moment. Naruto might not be the brightest crayon in the box, but even he knew there was no chance a group of genin could beat a Jounin on their own. Naruto's train of thought was interrupted when he heard a yell of Katon, Gukaku no Jutsu. Naruto was sure Kakashi wasn't going to try and seriously hurt a bunch of genin, so that only left Sasuke. Might as well check out how the brooders doing, thought Naruto while he started making his way to Sasuke through the trees, making as little sound as possible. Kakashi of course knew exactly where he was but decided to watch how this was going to play out. The aforementioned Uchiha was not having the time of his life, but all things considered, he could be doing worse, if only he could figure out how to get out of the ground. When I manage to pass this stupid test, I'll definitely ask him to teach me this jutsu, thought a very annoyed raven-haired boy. He could see how useful this jutsu could be, but that doesn't mean he liked being on the receiving end. It would be fun to trap the idiot using this. And almost like summoning him with his thoughts, said idiot made an appearance. Oi Sasuke, how'd you get in there? Asked a snickering Naruto. It really was hard not to laugh at the situation, but Naruto was trying his best to get a hold of himself. Right now wasn't the time to antagonize Sasuke. Shut up. Easier said than done. Naruto never knew any other Uchihas, but this one had a very short temper. Naruto conceded and started digging Sasuke out of the hole Kakashi left him in. During the process a hyperventilating Sakura appeared through the bushes only to look at the form of Naruto's prone body and, from her perspective, Sasuke's head laying on the floor. It wasn't long till she passed out yelling something about headless princes and more babble Sasuke couldn't quite make out. Any bright ideas? Asked Naruto. Sasuke was just about to blow him out and remind the idiot that he didn't need his help. He managed to get a hold of himself. Sasuke wouldn't say it out loud and he knew Naruto wouldn't either, but they were both friends, the only friend the other had, and even if socially adept was not Sasuke's defining trait, he knew better than to treat the only friend he had like dirt. Sasuke developed some sort of superiority and inferiority complex after that night, and sometimes he lost control over the most stupid things, but with Naruto it has always been different. It was a very weird friendship, and Sasuke couldn't quite remember when or how exactly it had started, but it did. Maybe it was that one time in the lake. A lonely boy found himself sitting in a little pier above the lake where he learned his most prized jutsu, the jutsu that made his dad proud of him. Not that it mattered anymore. It had been a few weeks since the night that forever changed his life, since the night when his greatest hero, the person he looked up to the most, betrayed him. It had been a few weeks since he snapped. It had been a few weeks since the Uchiha massacre occurred. Sasuke had been a very sad and lonely boy these past few weeks, but most of all he had been annoyed, very annoyed. He couldn't understand why the people of the village thought he would want their pity and empty apologies. The only thing he wanted was to kill that man, at least that's what he told himself. The only thing he wanted other than revenge was company, even if he wouldn't admit it himself. He longed for someone he could relate to, someone who would be able to understand what he was feeling. For some reason he felt the need to turn around in that very instant. A blonde kid wearing a white t-shirt and gray shorts was walking by in the road right behind the lake he was sitting at. Sasuke knew him as a boy in his academy class. Menma, was it? Something like that, he couldn't quite remember, and it wasn't really important to him right now. The boy then mirrored his actions and turned to look at him. Loneliness. People often say the eyes are the window to the soul. It must have been true because all he could see in the eyes that mirrored his own so much it almost made him uncomfortable was that. People often say the eyes are the window to the soul. The blonde kid stared at him for a few seconds that felt like hours and then smiled at him. He smiled back. No words were spoken between the two, and it wasn't necessary. Both knew no words would be able to express what they were thinking. Both were lonely, but now they could be lonely together. How it started really wasn't important, it just started, and that was fine. After that encounter that looked to be almost orchestrated by fate, they had become friends, a very weird kind of friends, but friends nonetheless. Naruto was the only person Sasuke would talk to when they were together in the academy, and he would say something stupid to keep his mind occupied on something else. They never really interacted out of that space, but they both came to appreciate one another's presence, even if it would annoy Sasuke's fangirls to no end. To this day Sasuke still doesn't know if Naruto did what he did on purpose or if he was just being himself, but he was immensely grateful for it anyway. Not that he would ever admit it, of course, he had a reputation after all. "Are you there, Broody?" asked Naruto. For some reason Sasuke started zoning out on him today. "You're acting weird today, Tabia." Maybe being trapped down there affected him. He would give him a few minutes to recover while he woke Sakura up. There's no way they're going to fail this stupid test. Months of D ranks can take a toll on anyone's mental health, especially a kid with a lot of energy to spare and a very lazy sensei who so far has taught them nothing. "Gigi, can we please get a real mission? We're all tired of doing chores." Naruto held a lot of respect and love for the only family he has, so he wouldn't even dream of being rude to his grandfather. That doesn't mean he won't try to coerce him into giving them a worthy mission though. "What do you think, Kakashi?" "Ma, they're ready for a simple C rank." "They're most definitely not." "Alright then, let Tajuna-san come in." It was a simple escort mission to Nami no Kuni, and even if the client was a drunk and very annoying old man who claimed to be a super bridge builder, they could very well handle themselves. What's a few bandits going to do to them anyway? "Thanks for this, Gigi, we won't disappoint you. Everything will be okay. And, just here to tell y'all, this is my first FIC. I know it isn't perfect and I'm sure there's plenty of room for improvement, but I'm doing my best to serve an at least somewhat entertaining story. I would also like to point out that English is not my first language, and that only makes writing this the more difficult for me. I hope you like what's to come. Do leave me a follow and favorite if you feel like this is something worth reading. I have no intention of abandoning this story, and I planned the whole plotline before I even started writing it so I would always know what to do down the line. I will be using the Japanese names of the jutsu I use for 2 reasons. 1, I watched the anime in Japanese and that's what I'm used to. 2, for some reason there's different English names for the jutsus. I don't know if it's a translation thing or not, but it confuses me sometimes, especially because I didn't watch Naruto in English. I'll add the jutsus I use and their translation at the end of every chapter in my notes, like a glossary of sorts. So, Shiki Fujin Reaper Death Seal Katon, Gukaku no Jutsu Fire Style, Great Fireball Jutsu Cage Bunshin no Jutsu Shadow Clone Jutsu Chapter 2. Everything's not okay. The team was still making their way through Hinokuni, the fire country. The walk was mostly calm and easygoing, although sometimes it got hard to ignore that old drunk and his boisterous attitude. How could someone brag so much about a bridge? Other than a few questions asked by Sakura for the sake of making conversation, not much had been going on. Naruto was mostly annoyed at the speed they were going, but there was little he could do while escorting a civilian, so he had to suck it up and be patient. Sadly for him, patience was never his virtue. Being the son of Uzumaki Kushina granted him incredible stamina and endless energy, and that wasn't always a good thing. Naruto was also an orphan, and while his crave for attention was greatly diminished after finding out about his mother and his clan, he still wanted the opportunity to prove himself to others, which led to a Naruto, and a brooding Sasuke who made a very good job at hiding it, who was itching for something interesting to happen. That might have not been the best thing to hope for. Not long after Team 7 along with Tajuna crossed the border on their way to Nami, they were ambushed by a pair of Chunin-level missing nin from Kiri called Gozu and Miizu the Demon Brothers. Kakashi decided to stand down and let his students take on the attackers. Sasuke was able to successfully defeat one of the brothers with the use of well-aimed shuriken and pure taijutsu skill, while Sakura stood in front of Tajuna in order to guard him. Unfortunately, Naruto froze on the scene after being led to believe his sensei was dead, which caused him to receive an attack from a poisoned claw courtesy of one of the attackers. After interrogating Tajuna and their captives, and swiftly ending their lives without the knowledge of his students, Hatake Kakashi decided to leave it up to the kids to choose whether or not they'll continue with the mission or go back to Konoha. In a moment of bravado, Naruto stabbed his own hand to get rid of the poison and swore on his blood to protect the client at all costs and never freeze up that way again. Sasuke's case was based on him wanting to prove himself against strong opponents. Sakura just went along with whatever he said. Kakashi accepted the decision and carried on with the mission without informing the village or requesting backup. Big mistake. Not long after, they were attacked by a Jounin-level ninja whose name was Mamakai Zabuza the Demon of the Mist. After dodging a flying sword from the eccentric ninja, a big battle with impressive use of Suten Jutsu took place. The fight ended with Zabuza being pierced in the neck by 3 Senbon needles courtesy of a Kiri Hunter Nin and a collapsing Kakashi who had to be carried all the way to the bridge builder's house due to chakra exhaustion. After Kakashi regained consciousness, he informed his team that the Hunter Nin who took Zabuza away didn't follow proper procedure, which most likely meant they were allied with the former, meaning the Demon of the Mist was most likely still alive. That same day, Kakashi decided that his undertrained and underprepared genin needed to improve their chakra control for the upcoming fight. Not that they knew more than one jutsu to truly benefit from being able to better control their chakra, but at least they wouldn't be wasting as much as they used to. Just like Kakashi predicted, a battle is taking place on the bridge they were meant to protect. Zabuza and Kakashi are both at a stalemate while the Hunter Nin has both Naruto and Sasuke trapped in a dome of ice mirrors. Ice Senbons flew at Naruto and he could no longer dodge. Exhaustion was finally setting in after using so many clones in order to fight. I should have learned at least a defensive jutsu, Not much I can do now, Tabia. To think getting rid of those idiots at the old man's house was extremely easy. The sound of a woman being dragged by two men wielding swords and a crying boy worried for his mother could be heard in the forest. It was pure luck that the thugs decided to make their move just before they left Naruto's, not so impressive, sensing range. It still took him some time to get there and couldn't stop the filthy men from getting their hands on Tsunami. We're going to have so much fun with you before taking you to GA. He never got to finish thanks to a very annoyed blonde boy who kicked him in the back of the head, knocking him out instantly. Why, you little she dash! A strong punch in the back of his neck courtesy of a second Naruto made sure to shut him up instantly. So uncivilized. After dealing with them, the Kage Bunshin who was accompanying Naruto poofed away, leaving only the original Naruto, a still crying Inari and a very shocked Tsunami. Sorry I'm late. But all heroes arrive late, right? Naruto's train of thought was interrupted when he saw a hail of senbons coming at him, intending to shut him off permanently. But they never did. Naruto opened his eyes, shocked to see Sasuke in front of him, hunched over and shaking violently. Naruto clenched his fist when he fully registered the needles protruding on his body from various angles. Sasuke. Sasuke looked back at him with the corner of his eyes and answered the question in Naruto's eyes before he even got the time to ask. My body. Sasuke muttered, his shaking slowed as he swayed backwards. Moved on its own. With his recently awakened Sharingan, Sasuke was able to perceive things a lot faster. Unfortunately for him, that doesn't mean he's fast enough to do something more than take the hit himself, so he did, and now his world was going dark. Naruto was trembling in fury. He just watched his only friend take multiple hits that were supposed to end him. He couldn't believe Sasuke had died to protect him. Rage was starting to overtake Naruto and cloud his judgment, but a weird feeling was starting to invade him. He just couldn't figure out what. There was something off here. Then it hit him. You didn't kill him. It was true, Naruto's sensing abilities were never trained since he discovered them, even though he did mention it to Kakashi, but that didn't mean he couldn't use them, and being that close to Sasuke allowed him to feel his chakra. You did the same thing you did to Zabuza. Why? The hunter inside and brought their hand to the mask they were wearing and removed it, revealing the same boy Naruto met in the forest days ago. Hahaku. Naruto sputtered. Why do you train so hard? Naruto didn't understand why the girl who woke him up a few moments ago was asking him that question, but he answered anyway. Maybe it was because he called her pretty. I train hard so I can become super strong, Tabia, replied Naruto with a big and warm smile to the pretty-looking girl in front of him. You look very strong already. Why do you need to become stronger? Naruto struggled to answer that question. He hadn't thought about that before. Why was he training so hard? Why did he want to become stronger? Do you have something precious to you? Someone. Naruto nodded. I believe a person becomes truly strong when they fight to protect what is precious to them. I think I understand. I'll protect the people I love and then I will be Hokage. Haku gave him a warm smile. You'll be really strong then. After saying that, she got up and started to leave. By the way, it flatters me that you think I'm pretty, but I'm a boy, said Haku, turning around to look at a blushing Naruto and then started to leave again. You're still pretty, Tabia, mumbled a still furiously blushing Naruto, but fortunately for him there was no one there to hear. I couldn't bring myself to hurt you, Naruto-kun, but I'll do what's necessary to help Zabuza-sama fulfill his wish. Naruto removed the needles on Sasuke's body and got up to face Haku once more. You don't have much chakra left, Haku. Just as he said that, Haku released the jutsu. The mirrors fell apart and turned to puddles of water. I don't need my jutsu, I'll put you to sleep just like your friend and then I'll help Zabuza-sama. Haku then readied the senbon hidden in his robes and prepared to launch them at Naruto, aiming to the spots that would leave him in a similar state as Sasuke. You don't have to do this, Haku, begged Naruto. I am just a tool for Zabuza-sama, I do his bidding and nothing more. He said you're not just a tool, damn it. You're a person. You can quit this. You can come with us, the old man will take you in, you can have a home. Naruto said, trying desperately to convince Haku. The boy in turn just looked at him and gave him a sad smile. I hope you can find it in yourself to forgive me when you wake up. He was about to put Naruto in a slumber but was interrupted when a chirping sound filled the bridge. Both Haku and Naruto turned around and looked at the scene revealed to them with the cleared mist. Zabuza was being held in place by a group of ninken courtesy of Kakashi, who was about to put a hand through the rogue nin's chest using his famous Reikiri. Without even stopping to think, Haku used a quick shunshin to get in front of Kakashi and then... silence. No one dared to make a sound. Both the faces of Naruto and Kakashi were filled with shock. Kakashi saw in that smiling boy with a hand through his chest and blood dripping from his mouth the face of his late teammate. Rin. Haku. Naruto screamed his name as he ran towards the scene, while in the distance the recently reawakened form of Sasuke was fighting to stand up. He was weak and unable to move by himself, but he was alive. Zabuza stopped himself from attacking Kakashi through the body of Haku after seeing the reaction of that little boy. All he could feel while watching that ray of sunshine crying over the death of his partner was guilt. Never will he be able to tell Haku that he meant a lot to him. He won't be able to tell him he was more than just a broken tool. He won't be able to tell him he was his son. The sound of a cane accompanied by the sound of an army of men holding crossbows and swords suddenly invaded the bridge. Ha 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 ha. So much for the demon of the mist. I knew you weren't worth what you charged for your services, Zabuza. Declared a laughing Gato. Well, I wasn't gonna pay you anyway, so it all works out in the end. Deal with them, boys. Whoever brings me the body of that little boy who broke my arm gets paid extra. I'm going to make him my bitch. Zabuza said. It looks like I'm no longer your enemy, Kakashi, said Zabuza as the ninken holding him puffed in a cloud of smoke and let him move on his own again. Kid, said Zabuza looking down at Naruto to meet his eyes, lend me a kunai. Kakashi's ninken did a number on Zabuza's arm, so he was forced to take the kunai on his mouth. That was more than enough to kill a bunch of bulky untalented men. When Zabuza was about to charge the army of thugs, it happened. The crossbow users felt an impending sense of doom and decided to take action before action against them could be taken. They shot at them an enormous barrage of arrows. Luckily, the shinobi in the bridge were more than able to dodge and deflect the oncoming projectiles. Wrong. Zabuza and Kakashi used the big surface of the Kyubikurei Basho to shield themselves from most of the arrows while dodging the few that made it past the sword. Sakura went into shock immediately and wasn't quick enough to stop herself from dying. Naruto was beat and tired, but he was never tired enough not to save a comrade, and he knew one of his teammates needed his help right now. He went from being the one shocked in need of saving to the savior. He wasn't worried about Sasuke. Sasuke was the best of them. Sasuke was going to be alright. Naruto jumped in front of Sakura and Tajuna without a second thought and stood his guard. Sakura couldn't believe him. He willingly risked his life just to keep her safe. He deflected most of the projectiles, but couldn't avoid the one that pierced his leg, and the one that went to his right eye. He was quick enough to avoid it piercing his skull, but not enough to save the beautiful azure orb resting there. Sasuke wasn't that lucky. he was just barely able to stand on his own feet when the arrows started flying. One arrow pierced one of his legs, another found itself stuck in his stomach, 2 more arrows were stuck in his left arm and shoulder. The final arrow went right in through his chest and out, leaving a perfect hole in it. Zabuza took his kunai and ran at the army of men while Kakashi, Naruto, and Sakura all ran to Sasuke. Naruto was the first to drop right next to him, followed by Sakura. Sasuke looked to his right and saw Naruto's bleeding form with an arrow still stuck where his eye should be, then he turned to the left and saw Kakashi standing right next to him with his uncovered Sharingan eye. That gave him an idea. "You can't die yet, Naruto, why you still have to become Hokage? I'll help you." Naruto was confused by his friend's words but was too shocked to really give a damn. "Kakashi." "No, sensei." At those words even Kakashi let himself shed a tear. Sasuke never called him sensei, and seeing him like this, bleeding out on the floor, made him realize he didn't deserve it. He was no sensei to any of them. "Give the idiot my right eye, I know you see can do it." As he said that, he used what little chakra he had left and activated his Sharingan once more, one eye with a single tomo and the other with 2. "Are you sure, Sasuke?" Sasuke nodded, and Kakashi without so much as a second thought knocked Naruto out with a chakra-induced finger placed on his forehead. Consequences be damned, he was going to make sure his student's last wish was fulfilled, especially if it'll allow the other to see again, and better than he previously could. Kakashi covered his hand in the alcohol he got out of the bottle he had in one of his many pouches and then used what little Iryo ninjutsu he knew, and maybe even a little more, to extract Sasuke's right Sharingan eye, eliciting as little pain as possible to him. Then he started applying healing chakra on Naruto's right eye as he removed the arrow and carefully placed the new eye on him, working quickly on setting the right nerves in place with his healing chakra. You might argue it was not the cleanest and accurate of transplants, but it was effective, and that was all they would be able to get for now. He then closed Naruto's new eye, put his forehead protector over it in a way similar to his own, and reversed his induced sleep once more. Getting his senses together, Naruto took one last look at Sasuke. "Sasuke, don't bother, I'm beyond saving." People often saw shinobi as unkillable beasts. After watching them perform amazing feats thought impossible by many, one could easily forget that behind every single chakra-wielding shinobi was a fragile human being. A single knife is more than enough to take one of those out if used correctly. "Use my gift right, Naruto." Naruto, still not sure of what happened, felt a sting in the right side of his face and raised his hand to his eye only to find it covered with no arrow there. Then he looked at Sasuke's own right eye and found it missing. Realization hit him. "Avenge us, kill that man." "Us?" Sasuke looked at him one last time. "I'll become your eye and see the future for you," were Sasuke's final words before closing his remaining eye, never to be opened again. Kakashi's heart skipped a beat when he heard those painfully familiar words. It was funny, really. Sasuke always thought he wouldn't be able to die in peace without getting his revenge, without honoring his family, his clan. But now, on the brink of death, he felt free. Uchiha Sasuke lived the past 6 years of his life, hating and seeking power to one day kill his treacherous brother, but now he didn't need to. Now he could just let go, now he could just be. A beautiful raven-haired woman stood in front of him. He couldn't quite make up her face due to the incredibly bright light behind her, but she felt familiar. He had seen her before. Where? The woman knelt in front of him and extended her hand, face now clear for him to see. "Keikawa-san." "Yes, Sasuke-kun." The boy didn't even think twice before launching himself at the now revealed Mikoto and hugged her while tears ran down his face. Hugging his mother like this made him feel like he was that little 7-year-old boy with no care in the world again. In a way, he was. "It's all right now, my boy, don't cry. Kaya-san, I couldn't restore the clan, I couldn't avenge you," said Sasuke while crying uncontrollably on his mother's shoulder. "Don't worry yourself with such things, my little boy, it was never your responsibility and I'm sorry you felt like it was." The boy just couldn't stop himself from crying in his mother's embrace. He has wanted to see her for so long. "Come now, my love," said the beautiful woman while standing up and taking his little boy's hand in hers. "I'm sure there's a lot you want to tell me and we have all the time in the world." A pair of mother and son could be seen walking in a tunnel, their figures slowly disappearing in a beautiful and imposing bright light. If one looked at the bloody and battered body left behind by that poor and tormented soul, you could make out the faintest of smiles in his semblance. Together at last. Zabuza was beaten and bruised, he was stabbed multiple times and had some of the sword still in him. He was using every little piece of strength left in him to annihilate Gato and his men. After what felt like hours, a big crowd showed up on the other side of the bridge. The people of the village drove off the remaining of Gato's forces while he took care of Gato himself. With his dying breath, Zabuza walked all the way to Haku's body and collapsed, right next to him, giving his partner and surrogate son one last look. As he was slowly dying, it started snowing. "Are you crying, Haku?" were the last words ever spoken by one Mamakai Zabuza, the demon of the mist. It's been a week since the battle took place, the bridge has been finally completed and the people were celebrating. Not long after Gato's death, the people started looking for a new person to take over. Most had agreed on Tajuna with the position, but the man in question politely declined, explaining the only thing he was good at was building, so he recommended his own daughter, Tsunami, who apparently has always been the brains of their operation. Getting Nami back on their feet has been hard, but the people are excited and full of hope again, so they're working very hard to make Nami reach its former glory, and probably even more if the Hokage accepts a trade agreement between the two nations after the team who helped make this all reality delivers the letter. Said team, however, was having a very hard time. Naruto was recognized by the villagers as the hero of Wave, and while it is true that it was thanks to him that Inari found the courage to get all the people to raise and fight their oppressor, it was a very sour accomplishment. Naruto sent clones to work on the bridge along with Tajuna daily, but the real Naruto was barely seen. He only went in the house to sleep and spent most of his days looking at the graves of both Haku and Zabuza and the little memorial he placed for Sasuke along with them. Kakashi had informed Naruto that the last loyal Uchiha would receive a proper burial and funeral when they got back to the village, so he didn't have to worry about burying him himself. Naruto barely spent time with anyone, other than speaking constantly with the ghosts of dead people, at least not directly. He recently discovered that Kage Bunshin returned their experiences to the caster of the technique when he started noticing he remembered talking to a lot of people. At the same time, in the bridge he never visited himself anymore. Sakura was probably the one affected the most. Ever since she met him, Sakura made an ideal image of Sasuke in her mind, even if that wasn't who he really was. The perfect man who would always be there to save her from the danger, and then they would get married and she would carry all of his Sharingan babies. After Sasuke died, both she and Naruto had spent a whole day together in the room they shared without moving a single muscle. When Naruto started going out to visit the graves by himself, she would stay there and only ever leave the room to eat enough to not starve herself and go back. Naruto hadn't noticed because he hadn't been spending time with anyone, but Kakashi was very worried about the fact that Sakura hasn't ushered a single word to anyone about anything since Sasuke died. Kakashi was complicated. Every time he thought about Sasuke, all he would remember is telling Sasuke he wouldn't let his comrades die, telling Sasuke he would take care of his cute little genin. Kakashi had been the one to seal Sasuke's body for transport to Konoha. It was a silent agreement between the three of them that he was going to be the one to carry Sasuke on his back. Unbeknownst to the rest of his team, Kakashi took Sasuke's remaining Sharingan eye and burned it before the ceiling. He would be dead if he let someone ransack his student's resting place to steal the powerful eye. At first Kakashi wanted to blame everything that happened on both Sasuke and Naruto for convincing him to continue the mission. Then he wanted to blame Naruto because how could he blame a dead person? He quickly dismissed that thought and accepted the harsh reality. He had failed his team. Kakashi took a severely undertrained team on a mission they weren't prepared for. But he thought it would be alright because what would some bandits do to them anyway? Then he carried on knowing there were shinobi involved instead of going back or at least informing the Hokage of what happened so they could get reinforcements. He was a failure and he was going to make things right, or was going to at least make what he thought was right. When he got to Konoha, he was going to disband this team. The day when they finally got to leave arrived. The remaining members of Team 7 stood at one of the ends of the bridge, the people of Wave cheering their names and the name of the boy they saw as a hero. "We can't thank you enough for everything you did. Have a safe trip and don't hesitate to come here if you ever need anything," were the parting words of Tajuna for the team of shinobi. After hearing that and nodding their heads in approval, all members started to walk away while the people of Nami watched. "Tajuna, what are you going to name the bridge?" asked one random man in the crowd. Before he had the time to respond, his own grandson beat him to it. "Why don't we name it after Naruto and Ii-chan? He saved us all and helped build it?" asked Inari, clearly excited at the prospect of naming the bridge after the boy who became his idol and helped him and his people so much, forgetting Naruto was far from being the only one who helped save their country. A lot of cheers of approval could be heard after that, many people who came to admire the boy for his work on the bridge agreeing with little Inari. "No," replied the old man, much to the surprise of his grandson. "Naruto is a hero, there's no doubt about that, but after what happened, it doesn't feel right." Murmurs from the people around Tajuna could be heard and people started to see reason in Tajuna's words. "What are we going to name the bridge then?" asked Inari. Tajuna thought for a moment about the events that led to the construction of the bridge, ever since leaving Konoha. "A young shinobi, the last of his clan, gave his life so we could have ours. I'm sure even Naruto would agree with me. To honor his memory, we'll name this bridge after the boy and what he stood for. The Great Uchiha Bridge." I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you liked it, subscribe to my channel for more fan fictions like this, and goodbye.